In addition to the landform elements, we also want you to make this sculptural element in your site plan using the radial bend tool of the Fredo scale tools and the radial bends on the far right. We don't know the size of this, we don't know the angles, but we do have some photographs that we can use as reference. We have a rough idea of what that shape does, and we also have, we can look at Google imagery, albeit grainy, understanding what that shape is. And I'm making some guesstimates here that it's around 10 feet on this leg, 12 feet here, and we'll just call it 12 feet on that whole bend. As long as I maintain these proportions, it will look largely or close to the representation of the sculpture. Now I'm not going to model in the site model. In fact, it's a good practice when you work with elements that you have to model that are going to be included in the site to use a new model in SketchUp. So I'll go ahead and do a new model. No, I'm not going to save changes. In the new model, we can start modeling our sculpture a little more efficiently, because when we start orbiting around, we're only orbiting around that one object, and we can bring it into our site model later. And if we have to make changes, it's easier to make those changes outside of the model and re-import it in. I'm going to leave Chris here as a scale element, so when we start drawing our sculpture, we can see roughly what that size is. I only need him, actually I can turn him off, but I want you to see his the size and proportion when I start drawing these pieces. So I said it's about a 4x4. I'm guessing this is about a 4x4 end here, based on other photographs that show people sitting in the sculpture. To use to make a 4x4 piece in SketchUp, I'm going to use the rectangle tool and type in 4 feet, 4 feet, enter. Whoops. I'm going to use the rectangle tool in SketchUp and draw 4 feet, 4 feet, enter. I'm going to reverse those faces. Looks like it's in the wrong direction again. I'm going to pull this up 10 feet. Now why am I pushing this up 10 feet? In fact, actually no, I'm not going to push it up 10 feet. I'm going to push it up 6 feet. So I'm going to drop this down 4 feet. Why is this 6 feet tall? Well, as I mentioned, this inside bend is going to be 12 feet. But I know this bend, notice that this bend is more than 180 degrees. A limitation of the radial bend tool is that you can't bend it more than 180 degrees. Therefore, to achieve the 200 degrees, which I'm estimating it needs to be, I need to break that 12 feet into 2 segments of 6 feet columns. So to use the radial bend tool, I choose it from the tool, so on the far right hand side. I hover over the face that I want to orientate myself to, hold shift down, click on the base point, click on my reference angle, and then hold my left mouse button down. I can let go of shift and bend it in the direction that I want it to bend. You notice if you look at the control here, it says 90 or negative 90 degrees. I care about the negative, so I'll type in negative 100 degrees. I'm halfway to my 200. I'll double click here, make that a group, double click again, get inside of here, pull this out 6 feet, triple click on that, get the whole group, use the radial bend again, hover over that, hold shift down, and use the same part, inside part that I was on the first object, being consistent. Click again on my reference point, click and hold, and then bend it again, negative 100 degrees. Now I have my full bend that I need it to be. However, this is actually standing itself up on end. I want to lay this thing down. I want to rotate this down so as it's being drawn or shown here in the site. To rotate this, I'm going to have to use a helper application. I'm also going to say goodbye to Chris because I don't need him anymore. I'm going to use a helper shape, that is. I'm going to make this a group. create some object that I can use my rotate tool against, because if I were to use the rotate tool on this object, I don't have a vertical face to work on. But if I select this object and use my helper object, or select my geometry that I want to rotate, and use my helper geometry, click on this point, I'm holding shift down to maintain that direction of that face direction. I'll rotate this down 90 degrees. I can see the helper object breaking apart, no big deal. Triple click, get rid of it, and I'm now laying down with this object. Now I also know this object is twisted. It looks like it's around twisted 30 degrees here. Instead of twisting this geometry 30 degrees with the Fredo scale and twisting this again, I'm just going to rotate the entire piece 15 degrees to get myself halfway there. So if I select all of the geometry, using the rotate tool, I'll click on the base, the bottom here. I want to make sure that I'm staying in that face direction, so I'll hover over the face that I want to rotate against, or rotate along, click on another point, start rotating, type 15 degrees, there we are. As I said, I want to twist this metal, so I'm going to use the Fredo radial bend here on this piece. Again, hover over the face that I want to rotate against, or at least to keep the aspect, the aspect of the rotation to that plane. I'll hold shift down, and I'm going to go ahead and choose the midpoint of the piece touching this object over here. I'm also going to touch the midpoint of that face, then click and hold with my left mouse, let go of shift, and start rotating up. I'm going to rotate negative 15 degrees. Now it does tear at the bottom here, but we can fix this a little bit later. I'll double click on that face, push pull this out. I said 10 feet. So we are almost there. That is that bend, that direction, right there. Actually, it's more in this perspective. Okay. To do the back part, I'm going to double click on it. Now I can rotate this as the same thing I did with the other one, using the FredoBend and rotating in, holding shift down on that face, clicking on this piece, click on this piece, and then bending this out to give that little more of that bend the way it is. However, it's going to start breaking up on that face. Now I want to make sure this face stays planar as I rotate it in the front. What I mean is, I want to make this make that a group, double click. When I pull this thing out, oops, you can start seeing these things, these lines are starting to draw on here. And what's going to happen when I actually bend this, it'll break apart. So to save myself that agony here on this video, I'm going to undo, 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 and we're going to make this simpler. And we'll just go ahead and use the push-pull, or make that group again, double click, and we will push-pull this out about 6 feet, and we will bend this up without having to do the extra twist. It won't look exactly the same as the picture, but I'm trying to keep us from having to use more plugins to get this to work, to look exactly the same. I use the FredoBend, hover over, hold shift down, grab the top, and this time I'm click again, and this time I'm going to bend it 160 degrees. Again, it broke on the bottom. We'll fix that in a minute. But this time it actually also unhealed that face. Well, that is a problem. There it is. It should not have broken, but we fixed it. Now I think I have a non-planar face. You should not have to redraw this. I'm actually going to undo this because I know that works without having to do that work. I'll make that a group, double click, push pull this out 6 feet, triple click on this, hold shift down, touch the top. I might have grabbed the wrong point. Grab this midpoint, click again, click and hold, let go of the shift to start the bend. I'm going to type 160 degrees. Hopefully I still have my face. I do. Go ahead and do a push pull on this. I'll push pull this out 12 feet. Because I'm in my own model, I'll go ahead and explode all this because I don't need to have a bunch of nested shapes. I'm bringing this in fully as a component to my site model so I can leave this exploded. I'm also going to go in here and actually heal up those pieces where it tore apart. I did this a number of times. Sometimes this worked without this. Hopefully you don't have these tearing on you. There we go. I'll go and erase this out. Hold the control key down. Erase those, soften, smooth those edges. Don't really need to worry about the bottom so much, but I don't want these edges showing. It's supposed to be a smooth piece of steel. The other thing this steel is, it's a different color. It's not white. It's a rusty red. Use my materials. I'm going to choose some rusty red. That's pretty bright. And I'll save this as my sculpture file. Save over top of the other one. And there we go. So I'll go back to my site model. I'll go to File, Import, choose that sculpture, import it, and go ahead and drop it in. I'm also going to want to rotate this into place based on the image. I believe this has to go 180 degrees. And I'll go ahead and slide this into place. Now you see it's sinking itself in. It's going to have to sink a little bit in because we did do that rotation. It would look a little weird sitting perfectly on that edge. So I'll let it sink in just a little bit. And when I move it, I'm going to move it by clicking on one of our planar faces. I'm not going to move it by touching the landform. If I touch the landform, it's going to raise and lower that undesirably. And so there is my object placed in there, and I can now move on with my adding other elements to my model.